Welcome back to the Why Mindset Matters podcast. I'm Eslana Loa. I'm a speaker, author, resilience mindset coach. I'm a nurse and a midwife and a mother of four. And if this is somehow the first episode of mine that you are listening to, I just want to provide a trigger warning. I do discuss the loss of my teenage daughter Rylee to suicide because of bullying. So today I want to discuss the Kindness Crew. It's a business that my girls started in the aftermath of unimaginable loss following witnessing their sister's suicide. Rylee had jumped off my balcony 33 stories in the air with me in her sister's home, and although none of us saw her jump from the balcony, just that she had disappeared, and I had to go down and find her. And then because I was screaming so loud, the girls heard me from 33 stories up and they came down and they saw her body. So life is a lot, and I only mention that to give weight to what they were dealing with as I tell you the story of how the Kindness Crew came to be. So pretty early in our grief, the girls came to me saying that they wanted to start a business. Zali had not long turned 12 and Mia was 14 at the time. And my initial thought, if I'm honest, was like, are you fucking kidding me? I still am not convinced that I can even survive this. Like I'm not going to hurt myself, but I feel like I'm dying a slow death of a broken heart. And in the early days, so often you'd hear people say, just one day at a time, but it's not one day at a time. It's 1 minute at a time. And just taking a breath feels like the shards of your broken heart are going to pierce your lungs and just completely destroy you. Getting through 1 minute at a time is so difficult that it makes a day feel insurvivable. So here I am in that kind of aftermath where my nervous system is just running on overdrive and I'm trying to catch my breath still, let alone keep my business afloat. And I honestly didn't know how I would rebuild myself professionally or personally, as if I needed to be helping launch a new business. But I kind of fobbed them off, telling them to look into drop shipping because that would mean that they could make money without getting their hands dirty, so to speak. So I kept trying to point them in that direction, but the motivation behind their ongoing request was that they said they realized that life is short and they wanted to travel, but they didn't want me to have to pay for it. So initially I thought it was just an attempt to distract themselves from this newfound reality and the after effects of our trauma, but it was so much more than that. They saw how hard life already was for me, juggling grief and immeasurable loss and trauma and trying to run a business, and they didn't want to burden me with the added financial pressure, but also didn't want to miss out on travel and adventure that they truly desired because they didn't have their own jobs to be able to pay for themselves. So they were trying to take things into their own hands and believed that they could make it happen. So they then, down the track, after me fobbing them off a few times, came to me with their business name ideas, their logos already made, their online cart ready to go with everything they needed to get started. And I mean, how do you say no to that? So began what would prove to be, or turn into, quite the adventure. Initially, Mia, the older one, was making handmade earrings and called herself Made by Mia with her logo and everything. And then Zali was making handmade bracelets that said Be Kind. And she called herself Bracelets by Zali. And the school got behind them by offering them a stall at the PBC markets here on the Gold Coast. We found T-shirts that said Be Kind and headed off for the markets. And looking back, the time-consuming nature of making all the jewelry actually ended up being a really valuable way to positively pass the time in those early days of our grief. And I'm actually really grateful for that. I have beautiful memories of sitting there with them because they didn't expect to be so successful. So there were so many bracelets to make, and we'd sit up and I'd be there with sore fingers from tying all the knots of these bracelets that they had made. But their first day at the markets, we had to get up at 4:30 in the morning and it was cold. We set up the stall before they officially opened, obviously, and the weather was so cold you could see your breath. I looked at both these girls standing there who, whilst I understand that they were cold, they did not look inviting. They're standing at this stall, and I said to them, are you girls happy to be here? And they both enthusiastically replied, yeah, of course, because it was our first day. And I said, then tell your face, because your shirt says Be Kind, but your face says fuck off. And they giggled, knowing that I wasn't wrong. And although I said it jokingly, I explained to the girls that you never know just how much a simple smile could mean to someone, and the importance of being aware to not have a resting bitch face when you're in frontline customer service. And so the morning went well and their store was well received. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning, and an American gentleman came marching over to Mia and said, "What is your name?" And she replied, "Mia." And he said, smiling from ear to ear, "Mia, the way you smiled at me and maintained eye contact, sell me something, darling." And he introduced himself to Zali and went on to say how well he thought the girls were going to do in business before he finished up with his purchase and walked away. And I chased him down to say thank you and explained to him that he'd just reinforced what I'd been trying to teach my girls. And as we spoke, he realised I had tears running down my face, and I'm thanking him. He's like, "It's okay." And I explained that we'd actually recently lost their sister to suicide because of bullying, and how much I appreciated him coming and reinforcing what I'd been trying to teach them. He hugged me before he actually offered to be their business mentor for the girls, and then even came back, talked to Mia, offered her a babysitting job, saying that he wanted her energy rubbing off on his 5-year-old daughter. And little did we know at the time, but he would actually become quite good family friends with this man and his family. But the girls did so well at the markets that day, and quickly realised that they needed to combine forces and really focus on the Be Kind bracelets rather than earrings, because the kids loved the Be Kind bracelets. They loved the Choose Kindness message behind it all. And so they morphed very quickly into one and called themselves the Kindness Crew. And the next week they were a hit. Kids were running up excited going, "We've found you," as they'd pull out their pocket money and buy their Kindness Crew bracelet. And the American gentleman then did a post on his social media explaining that he'd met these girls at the markets and who they were, and how they had chosen kindness in their grief, and how they were spreading a message of kindness, and how important kindness is as a choice, and the impact that it can have, reinforcing that kindness is a choice. Not always an easy one, but a very important one, and one that could save lives. And so as a result, the girls were inundated with orders from America, and suddenly they just needed to make like 100 bracelets of these Be Kind bracelets, where they were putting every bead, like I'm talking thin polymer clay beads and lettering and triple knots and everything. And so this was on top of the 100 that they needed to make to send to America, was on top of what they needed in order to stock the markets the next time they went. We honestly couldn't keep up. We ended up needing to source wristbands, pre-made wristbands that they had made in rainbow in honour of Rylee that said the Kindness Crew and Choose Kindness in big letters. They came in all sizes, everything from tiny toddler, child, teen, up to an adult. And they had so many wristbands that they made some of them into key rings. And the three of us would spend each evening making bracelets as we watch movies and listen to music. And I have such fond memories of nights that could easily have been spent feeling so down and depressed, but instead were so joyful because of how well the girls had been received with this business that they had started. And it came with such good intentions, not just in how they wanted to support themselves and not add pressure to me, but they really saw an opportunity to spread a message of kindness and in how important a choice that kindness is. After each market day, we'd pack up and head off to a lunch date together. We really made it a whole thing, taking our time to enjoy what was left of our Saturday. So we'd eventually get home and unpack, but I made sure to really take my time getting to the part where I'd count their money. I liked that it was never about the money. They'd be so happy to bring home stories about all the kids that were so excited to have found them and get their own Kindness Crew bracelet like their friends, and the joy of spreading kindness and love felt like payment enough. It was so beautiful. And these kids would come and go, "We found you," and they'd pick the colour that they wanted, and the bracelets would be pre-made, but then we could cut it and retie it down to the size to fit their wrist. So it was so beautiful. Or they would get the actual wristband to fit them if they wanted that. So I love that they got to experience what it feels like to do something that you're so passionate about, and how it never feels like work if that's the case. And as the day unfolded, we'd gone for lunch, we'd come home, we'd unpack. Eventually, I would ask them, "Okay, how much do you think you made?" And they'd both put a guess in. They'd think about how many bracelets they sold, and they'd always be overwhelmed when it was most of the time twice what they had expected. It was so cool. So we made a website for people to purchase from, because the Americans were asking how they could order directly from us because they were hitting him up and he was just getting inundated, and that's how the 100 bracelets came up. So they wanted to order directly, and the girls would make each order up and then put a positive affirmation sticker in there and a handwritten note thanking them for their order before posting it off. It was incredible. They were sending orders to the States all over Australia. We had some business cards made, and I put a QR code to their website on one side and a brief explanation about Rylee's passing being the motivation to spread a message of kindness on the other side, which helped make the markets easier as I could just hand it to the parents instead of having to constantly repeat our story, which, although the girls didn't need to talk about it, I could tell that me explaining it over and over again was really beginning to take a toll on all of us, really. And although the girls pre-made the bracelets, as children would come up, as I said, they'd find the pattern, and the ones that they like would resize it on the spot for each individual if they wanted it that way. And each time we were at the markets, more and more kids would find us and say, "Oh my God, it's the kindness crew." It was so cool. "My friend has your bracelet. I came here just for you. I want one too." It was such an amazing way to spend our weekends. And there's something so special about the joy that comes from not just choosing kindness, but spreading it and being able to show the girls that too. Like, it definitely reinforced when you're walking around with a Be Kind shirt on, it changes the way you carry yourself. You're more aware of your facial expressions. You're more aware of smiling at people and how you carry yourself. So there was that element, but it was just so cool to be able to see the joy that came for all of us in being able to spread that message. So the months we spent getting up early, heading to the markets were incredibly therapeutic for the girls. And it gave them not only a sense of purpose, but also something to look forward to, which was so nice and so valuable. And during that time, I actually met a man at a conference who was hosting an upcoming entrepreneurs event on the Gold Coast. And when he learned about the Girls in the Kindness crew, asked me to bring them with me to that event. He said he wanted to bring them up on stage and that we should bring as many bracelets and wristbands as possible. He wanted to make an example of them and show that if there's somebody in the audience who's thinking about starting a business and here's this 12 and 14-year-old doing it, what's stopping you? So he met the girls prior to the event beginning and explained to them what he intended to do. He said that, wanted to make that example of them and explained how that could help even the adults in the audience who may have been doubting themselves to feel more confident in just taking the leap if they heard the girl's story. So during the event, he invited us up on stage and introduced the girls by saying, "This is Mia and Zali, and they have the business called The Kindness Crew. They're selling these wristbands for $15 each that say choose kindness. Who wants one?" And we shit ourselves because we weren't selling them for $15 and we felt like, oh my God, that's too much money. And so a couple of people put their hand up and the girls looked at me nervously because we don't charge $15, and we'd been selling them for $10 each or two for $15. And so they looked at me nervously and I just smiled at them like it's okay. And then he said, "Okay, now I want to tell you how I met their mum." And he went on to explain about how we'd lost Rylee and the girls had formed the Kindness Crew in an attempt to spread a message of kindness and reminding people that kindness is a choice. And the three of us just stood on stage staring at the floor, just tears falling from our eyes just straight onto the stage and our arms around each other. And I looked up and saw nearly 300 people just in tears. And he said, "Okay, now who wants one?" And all of these people jumped up. And as they did, he said, "For $50 each." And so all these people have jumped to their feet. And he's like, "Just to be clear, I said they're $50 each." No one sat down. And he goes, "All right, they're $70 each." Not one person sat down. And he looked at the girls and he goes off the microphone, "This is how even Tiffany and co find their price point. You just keep going until people tap out." And he said to the crowd, "They also have these cool key rings. So if you want one, $70 each, or you can get both for $100. And that's when two people sat down. And he told the crowd, "All right, you'll find the girls outside in the lunch break. You can grab your Kindness Crew bracelets and key rings out there." He thanked us and we left the stage. And at lunch, we sat nervously on the lounge in the foyer, and almost immediately there was just a lineup of people wanting to purchase from the girls. And the first man said, "I'll take three sets." And I'm holding the square eater and I'm just shaking. And I said to him, how much do you want to pay? Because we've been charging $10 each or two for 15. And he goes, darling, he said they're $100 a set. That's $300. And he just taps his card, congratulating the girls on forming such a beautiful bond and delivering on such a great cause. They made $900 in 5 minutes and $3,000 that day. What was the greatest value that day was the sense of community, though, and connection that they received, and the ability for me to show them that although there's plenty of unkind people in the world, there's so many more kind people. And it was incredible to be able to gift that to my children. I felt so privileged because the money was like an added bonus. That was obviously incredible and mind-blowing for them. But we all walked away going, holy shit, like we have been trying to keep our heads above water in this awareness of how many fucked, unkind, nasty and bullying people there are in the world. But your energy goes where your focus is. And here we were focusing on spreading a message of kindness and choose kindness and being and embodying the kindness crew. And here we were reaping the rewards by finding our people. We were just surrounded by all of these beautiful, kind people who, bought from the girls, but also stayed to give them their feedback and sit there in tears with them and say how much they appreciated, or that they had been bullied, or that they had lost someone, and how much it meant to them, the message that the girls were spreading. So it became one of the most invaluable life memories of their childhood that they'll have because of what they got from that sense of community and connection, being able to show, like I said, so many more kind people. And it's about putting yourself in the right room so that you can find your people in life, and the power of finding your tribe, and that you really can achieve anything if you have a passion for it and you surround yourself with the right people, with people who want to see you succeed, because they'll lift you by default. And so the girls did end up traveling. For Zali's 13th birthday, which was last February, we went to Bali, and the girls paid for their own flights. They ended up paying for part of the accommodation. So one of the places that we stayed at, I said to them, like, there's a room that we can stay in. Well, there's a much nicer room that's like $300 extra. Which one should I do? Do you girls think I should pay the extra, They ended up saying, oh, no, book the better room, Mum. We'll pay $150 each. And so they just contributed more so that we could have a nicer experience. They took their own spending money, and although I thought I was paying for meals, what ended up happening was they'd sit down and they'd look at the menu and decide on what they wanted to eat based on what they were willing to spend. They managed their money so well. So you got to think too, at 12 turning 13 and 14 nearly 15, these girls were navigating another currency, bartering in order to shop, navigating menus and deciding on how to feed themselves in a way that saw them manage their money while they were away. They managed their money so well they actually ended up, and they didn't go without. They did everything that they wanted to. They bought all the stuff that they wanted to, and they still brought a couple of $100 back with them. And it was invaluable. They learnt more about life, living, bartering, poverty, compassion, handling money, foreign currency in the 2 weeks that they missed of school, more than they would in their entire year spent in a school classroom. I was very happy to pull them out for those 2 weeks. It was invaluable. It was also the first proper holiday that I had ever been on. I didn't take my children on holidays. I joined them on theirs. And I've never had an experience like that. To be able to be free to truly experience what it means to be. I had children young. I never traveled. I didn't do anything like this. I didn't have any experiences like this. So any experiences that I did have through my adult life, I was responsible for everybody. I had to budget. I had to afford it. I had to worry or be at least aware of whether or not everything was going to work out financially in order for this holiday to occur. And so to be on holiday where I didn't have to worry about anyone but myself and just really be free to enjoy every moment with them. Because if we decided to do something, it was because we each decided that we were invested in that enough to part with our own money. And it's a very satisfying way to spend your time and company, time in the company of others, is when you're all invested individually. nobody's kind of along for the free ride. We drank mocktails with drag queens and sang karaoke, and it was the best. All the super drunk Aussies in the karaoke bar thought the fact that my daughters picked American Pie and was only trumped by the fact that they knew all the words and sang it like rock stars in the eyes of these intoxicated Australians. Just everyone was having the best time. It was amazing. It was so, so cool. And I've always loved that song, hence why the girls knew it, but it will forever hold the fondest memories of an incredibly healing time spent with my girls in Bali, where they got to let their hair down, even momentarily set their grief aside and just truly live the shit out of 2 weeks spent adventuring. And we went over with a friend and her daughter and the daughter's boyfriend, and it was just such a beautiful trip. Watching the local bartenders ply the tourists with alcohol until they didn't know where they were and then overcharge them on their bill, hoping that they were too intoxicated to notice, and then witnessing a man drop his wallet, vomit in the street, and then nearly get run over because he could barely walk, also taught them a valuable lesson about the importance and merit of RSA and responsible service of alcohol and why we have it in this country. They learnt so much, seeing the same tourists grossly hungover at the resort the following day also taught them valuable lessons about the effects of alcohol without having to actually partake and learn firsthand themselves. And then that gave me the opportunity to discuss that you always have the opportunity in life to learn by someone else's mistakes, and the importance too of being really careful in a third world country where things like that, RSA, don't apply and they will overserve you, and it can lead to all of these added risks. And it wasn't about fear-mongering. It was just such an enjoyable trip full of lessons and adventure and so much. They saw how easily the intoxicated can be hurt or injured or taken advantage of. Like I said, it facilitated conversations around how when people live in poverty, it makes them act for survival in ways that they don't always consider the implications of those actions, and how to travel safely, especially as a female. So we come back, and 5 weeks later, we went on our first ever cruise ship for my birthday, and the girls had contributed $1,000 each towards this $6,000 trip that saw us travel to Noumea and New Caledonia as well. They met so many other teenagers on that cruise, and they had what they still refer to as the best holiday ever. They loved it. It was incredible. We had, within this 6-8 week period, so much adventure and so much joy in our life. And although they reached a point of emotional exhaustion, and in time, we actually ended up needing to step back from the markets because time unfolded and we kept doing it, but we were kind of getting close to that 1 year anniversary, and I could tell it was getting to be a lot, but they didn't want to be, they would have felt bad in being the ones to go, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, because it was such a positive thing. I think they would have felt guilty in advocating for themselves and needing to step back. They still, even the other day, they're like, such and such, I saw her yesterday and she still wears her Kindness Crew wristband. We're 2.5 years after losing Rylee now, and they did it in that first year and up until around the first anniversary, at which point I had said, we're going to take a step back, girls. We're just going to take a break from the Kindness Crew. And you could see their little shoulders, just like the pressure that was off their shoulders, because it was becoming a lot, having to kind of revisit the narrative as to why we got into this. The benefits kind of weren't as big and obvious as opposed to the risks of continuing it through that 1 year anniversary and their little souls just needing a break. But we even ran into a man at the shops recently. He said with a giant grin, "You guys are the Kindness Crew. You made me the Be Kind bracelet at the markets. I've been wearing it this whole time." And it was one of the beaded ones that we'd threaded and knotted. He's like, "It only just broke recently and I was just thinking about you guys." So many, even the kids at school. There's kids at school running around with these rainbow wristbands that say choose kindness. It's so cool to think, and for the girls to keep seeing all this time later the impact that they had. But knowing that Rylee had been bullied by somebody who'd previously been like family to us could have easily led us, including the girls, to do anything but choose kindness. And they were aware that Snapchat had been used to bully Rylee. And in time we had discussions about what was said, and I didn't bring it up to them, but naturally as time went by, they began asking questions because we hadn't kind of ever really, we talk about Rylee, we talk about everything, but that hadn't come up. And my endeavour as a parent was always to raise girls who would be honest with me, and I knew that if you don't get to the teenage years and then suddenly have a great open and honest relationship with your children, you know, it starts when they're young and with you providing age-appropriate honesty. So the truth was something I'd always offered my girls, and I'd never tried to sugarcoat it either. I would always give them honest answers. So when they started asking about what had been said to Rylee, I was honest. I was careful, but I was honest, and I explained how I believed that Rylee keeping things to herself instead of discussing and unpacking them negatively impacted her mental health so rapidly that I believe that even if she had wanted to discuss any of it, she wouldn't have really known where to start. And I explained how no matter how big or small something seems, a child's mind is not usually mature enough to see it in the same light that an adult can, and that's why we're best equipped to help them navigate the challenges of life, but that we also don't know what we don't know. I answered their questions as they arose and offered them the same age-appropriate honesty that I always had. But the most important thing is that I believe they saw me choose kindness. They also saw it doesn't mean going out of your way to be kind to somebody who's wronged you. That's not what it is either. It could be as simple as choosing kindness for yourself by removing yourself from a situation that doesn't serve you anymore. It could also mean not holding on to anger that won't change the past or bring the person back. So the kindness crew was their acknowledgement that kindness is in fact a choice, and that we know and understand better than most that it's not always an easy one. It is, however, one of the most important choices you'll make in almost all situations, whether or not to choose kindness. It's a choice that's so important and could actually save a life. The morning Rylee passed, she had apparently reached out to the bully asking them to please stop in an attempt for peace. And unfortunately, I was told this person went her even worse. So there's absolutely the possibility that had this person chosen kindness, maybe she would still be here. Whilst that's not a possibility I let torment me, it does drive home the fact that all anyone wants is to be loved and to be accepted for what and who they are. And we all crave connection. You never know what someone's going through and just how powerful a simple act of kindness may be in impacting their journey. And that's something that grief really shows you, is that everybody's just suffering. Everybody is carrying some kind of burden, and often a struggle that you don't understand or that you're not privy to. But it's a safe assumption that everybody is carrying something. And I was having this conversation recently with some people about how it's so easy to make an assumption about someone's rude behaviour or when they're abrupt. But it's also easy to make an assumption about somebody who's the life of the party or always has a big smile. You can't assume that that person's not carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. I know I've been that person whose laughter might light up a room, but it doesn't mean that I'm not carrying the world on my shoulders. And I was even at an event trying to find a park the other day, and I wound my window down and I said, is there somewhere we can park over there, to this man? And I could tell he was going where I was going. And he just gave me this look, glared at me, and just was really abrupt. And I thought, I hope his day gets better. And he ended up at a table that I later ended up at this networking event, and we got talking, and he'd lost his wife a number of years ago to suicide and was raising 4 or 5 children on his own. And he obviously softened once we kind of talked, and I think he realised that he'd been quite abrupt. But it would be so easy to just judge that interaction and then retaliate with the same kind of attitude or abruptness. And I think that whatever the interaction is we find ourselves in, regardless of the other person's behaviour, but particularly because of their behaviour, I think it's really important to choose kindness. And yes, kindness is a choice in that we can choose to be kind to them, but we can also be kind to ourselves if that kindness isn't reciprocated, because you can always give someone the benefit of the doubt, but also don't stay in rooms that don't serve you, because sometimes our ability to choose kindness is to be able to say, I'm going to exit stage left. This doesn't serve me anymore. I'm not going to let the positive energy that I am bringing to this space by being aware of the power of being kind be negatively impacted by your inability to do the same. And so I also it's helped me teach the girls that somebody else's behavior is very rarely anything to do with you. When someone is unkind, when somebody is inappropriate or bullying, it's usually got a lot more to do with them than it ever had to do with you. And so, yes, it's been quite the journey, and it's interesting because I had the conversation with Mia recently. Mia's just turned 16 and Zali's now 14, and they've had a break from the kindness crew, but they've also had all these wristbands left over, and more recently gave them out to kids at the health camp, and then when they came back to school, other kids saw them and was like, I want one too, and so they took what was left and they dispersed them. And now it's so beautiful because they're going to school every day and somebody's got it on their water bottle, or other kids are wearing them, and other kids who bought them back in the market days still wear them to this day. Adults and teachers wear them. We saw someone at the shop recently and noticed across the shop that they had a kindness crew wristband on. It's just been amazing. It's been such a beautiful way. And to think that in the beginning when they were saying, we want to start a business, I was like understandably a bit apprehensive because of the heaviness of my own grief and what I was dealing with. But I'm so grateful that those kids stuck with it and came to me with a non-negotiable of, here is everything. Here's our logo, our business names, our cart is ready to go. All we need to do is pay for it. Will you be our investor? And I was a very happy silent investor who was cheering them on from the sidelines, and I could not be prouder of those girls and the way that they have navigated their grief and spread this beautiful message of kindness. And the discussion that we had recently was, it's still there. The Kindness Crew Instagram, I didn't delete it, I just cleared it, and it's still there. And the girls will be back in some form. I spoke with Mia about how the world is her oyster now that she's getting older, and the power of her being able to show up so authentically as her, and the way that she lights up a room, that if she chose to, she could end up doing anything with it. She may end up speaking in schools. She may speak to teens. She may do, we don't know. We're not trying to define the edges of what the Kindness Crew will look like in the future, but watch this space because those girls are amazing, and I'm confident that they'll end up doing something with it. But yes, that is the story behind the Kindness Crew, and me using it in this episode as a gentle reminder that kindness is a choice. Not always an easy one, but an incredibly valuable one, and one that can save lives. So random acts of kindness, get around it. I would highly recommend. And I know from being on the receiving end of kindness, simple acts of kindness, how powerful they are when you are carrying the world on your shoulders and you're convinced that you will not survive this or can barely keep your head above water. It's the kindness of others that often facilitates a connection that really is at our core as a basic human need. And so it's extremely powerful. But thank you for listening to this episode of Why Mindset Matters. I'm Lana Lower. You can follow me at Resilience Mindset Coach on Instagram, and I look forward to sharing all of the future episodes with you.